Hi, I want to start by telling you a big house secret. So in my college house of 8 roommates, we each have beach names. The Huggy Huggy Beach, also known as the Mama Beach, the Queen Beach, the Main Beach, the Savage Beach, and I won't expose the rest. But I imagine you want to know what mine is. The TEDtalk Beach. Now, in my many TED Talks, the one recurring theme is education. What is the purpose of education? What is the role of schools? Why are school systems around the world failing many, many young people? How has school failed you, me, us? So why do these questions matter to me? And why should they matter to you, to all of us? When people ask me about my early childhood memories, I try so hard to flash back. I try to remember. But all I see is this dark, blurry, heavy cloud. In this cloud, I see resentment, pain, abandonment, fear, and I see poverty. My mother had me at the age of 17. My father, he disappeared as soon as he knew she was pregnant. So in addition to the pain, anger, shame, stigma that she was dealing with, my 17-year-old mother was expected to be the sole breadwinner for her 4 younger siblings, her single and unemployed mother. And now me? Maybe I was that blurry, dark cloud floating around, feeling unwanted, unloved, feeling invisible, not even sure that I existed. I just remember seeing so much worry in my grandma's eyes as she probably wondered where food for that day was coming from, what she would do if the landlord kicked us out of the house, how she was going to afford our school supplies, our medical needs. But my grandma, a single mother, breastfeeding me and my youngest uncle at the same time, raising 4 other children, relying mostly on what she was growing in her gardens to feed us, waiting on occasional money from my mom who had gone to the city to find a job. My grandma could only do so much. So my early childhood was filled with uncertainty, with unspoken yet loudly visible struggle. It was me trying to figure out how not to be a burden to my grandma, wondering constantly if all my existence ever did was make things worse for my family. When I got sponsored into a different school in grade 2, though, everything changed. Miss Nakito, my first teacher, read to us so passionately. She played soothing music in class while we napped on cozy little mats. She taught us new games and played with us, walked us to the swamps to collect beads which we used to make our own jewelry. She loved us. The African Children's Choir Primary School is a boarding school in Uganda that was run by a nonprofit organization that was built on the mission to empower the most underserved children in a couple African countries so that they can end the cycles of poverty for themselves and their families. At this school, our teachers, staff, every adult we called aunties and uncles. Everyone was family. When it was time to report to school, I did not have to worry about my school supplies, my clothing, hygiene products. Everything was covered. I just had to show up. So school became the place where I felt seen, loved, where I felt safe, where I learned that I mattered, that my dreams mattered, and that I could dream so much bigger than the limitations in my home community. School was where I no longer worried about food, where I played and felt like a child finally. My education was all my family and I had. When my mom passed away just before I turned 12, my education was my family's only way out of poverty, and it still is. I remember thinking at the time, well, my mom, whose financial contribution our whole family has been depending on, is now gone. My grandma is going to go crazy. My little sister is never going to recover from this. My two aunts who were in high school at the time are probably going to drop out of school. I have to do something. I couldn't afford to go home and see the pain and hopelessness in my family's eyes. So I vowed to myself that I was going to do everything it took to make sure that my family knew that they would eventually be okay. And I did. I took part in all sorts of competitions, especially if they involved winning money. I made sure to maintain top position in my classes because my school aunts and uncles usually gave me money for treats, which I instead saved up. When I moved back to Rwanda for my 6-year boarding high school, the organization gave us stipends, which I mostly saved up, although it was from our personal needs. My school directors promised me that if I ranked second nationally in Rwanda's national exams, that they would give me a full scholarship for my last 3 years of high school, which to me meant that I would get some of my tuition money back, and luckily, that worked out. So by the time I was in grade 9, I had helped my family move into our own home, which my mom had started, but it was barely halfway when she passed away. My little sister and uncle were able to stay in school and get their school supplies. I helped my aunt start a small hair salon business to support the family's basic needs. And most importantly, I saw my grandma begin to smile again. My education was all my family and I had. But I must acknowledge that I was privileged, and it breaks my heart to say that I was lucky. I can't help but think about the kids in my neighborhood, kids in regular public schools who did not have access to the basic resources that I had, and for them, the cycles of poverty have only continued or worsened. In a world where about 50% of the global population lives below the $5.5 a day poverty line, which really means that more than half of the world lives in poverty. For families with kids, this means that parents are either unemployed or working multiple jobs, that they are likely food insecure, housing insecure, not getting the healthcare or mental health resources that they need, or support with their homework from home. Not to mention the cruel reality that millions of kids are living in abusive homes, in foster care, refugee camps, on the streets, all around the world. And you know what hurts the most? Is that these facts are not unknown to us. So I don't understand why free healthy meals in schools is still a debate. Why providing free essential hygiene products, clothing, school supplies, Medical services in schools is still a conversation not even had enough today in 2021. Why there is no room for love, compassion, empathy, counseling services, mentorship programs in school systems all around the world. Yet we know from research that when kids feel safe, cared for, their basic needs met, they thrive way more in their education and the real world. And I am a living example of that. So what really is the role of schools? To answer this question, it is crucial to begin by debunking the most problematic myth upon which school systems around the world are fundamentally built. The myth of meritocracy. Meritocracy is the idea that it's all about hard work, abilities, and merit. That if you work the hardest, you'll be top student in your class, get admitted into the most elite college or university, land the best jobs, and basically live the most successful life. But this couldn't be more false. Meritocracy has the school system operating under the illusion that somehow me, a child growing up in extreme poverty, no electricity or internet access, barely any food at home, having to take care of my siblings when I get home, no parents to help with my homework, and a child in a wealthy home with way more than their basic resources, private tutors, that we are on a level playing field. Meritocracy assumes equality. That just because we sit in a shared classroom, we somehow have access to the same resources and therefore have equal chances of thriving. That a child in a wealthy private school with a small student-to-teacher ratio, funding for all sorts of extracurricular and special programs, multiple libraries, and a child in an underfunded, overcrowded public school with overworked and underpaid teachers, barely any books in the library, no funding for extracurricular activities, that somehow these two kids have equal chances at excelling on standardized tests or national exams, college applications, job applications, and life in general. Meritocracy is why we love to capitalize on the few poverty success stories, such as the famous movie Homeless to Harvard, or my story that was published twice in Rwanda's national newspaper when I ranked second in the country in our national exams, or that of the poor, homeless, and black child who becomes valedictorian in their predominantly wealthy white high school. And so we use such stories to mask, sugarcoat, and maintain a system that is at its core failing the majority of people in poverty. Meritocracy is why we love to blame poor people for their failure, why there is such a thing as the culture of poverty. The idea that it is culturally celebrated for poor parents not to work hard, not to attend school events, not to help their kids with homework, not to read to their kids. That poor kids are unmotivated, disruptive, indisciplined, and don't care about school. But meritocracy fails to acknowledge that the resources to which we have access are crucial to our ability to navigate the system. Meritocracy fails to acknowledge from those few poverty success stories that those kids have had to work an unhealthy amount of times harder, have had to sacrifice their childhoods, their mental health, their sleep, their relationships with family to attend private boarding schools away from home on scholarships. And that these stories are absolutely no indicator that the current system works for poor kids too, because it does not. Let's not pretend that we don't know that the school system is inherently rooted in exclusion, segregation, oppression, colonization, and not much has changed. Who gets to go to private wealthy schools? Which school communities get more funding than others? What languages get to be valued in school settings as official or professional? It is no mistake that schools in predominantly wealthy white communities in the United States get way more funding than the poorest communities. That children in Rwanda are still punished for speaking Ikinyarwanda, our native language, by schools, but praised and rewarded for speaking English. Forced by school policies to shave their hair because it apparently is not professional, with utter disregard for what that does to our self-esteem and sense of identity. The school system is doing exactly what it was built to do. I couldn't have made it through high school without everyone who went above and beyond to make sure that I had my essential resources met. I, a first-generation, low-income girl from a small village in Ngororero district of Rwanda, whose family has absolutely no idea what the heck I'm doing and could only hope that I'm not selling my soul for them. I couldn't be graduating from Middlebury College this May without the extra love, mentorship, financial support that I've received from so many incredible people and programs on this campus and beyond. Thank you to everyone who has made it their mission to support kids like me. But I think it's time for systemic change. So what are kids growing up in poverty, in abusive homes, in foster care, in orphanages, in refugee camps on the streets? What are we asking for from our education leaders, school leaders, and the whole system? We ask for school systems that are built on equity. School systems that understand that we come to school with different needs, but unless these needs are met, our ability to thrive is undermined. School systems that understand that leveling the playing field means that some kids will need extra love, extra support, extra mentorship, extra patience in order to successfully navigate the system. School systems that are built on empathy, compassion, holistic mentorship. School systems that understand that more than our personal development, more than our grades, we also need them to consider our personal development, our passions, our dreams, our emotional and mental health. We ask for school systems that understand that we will need extra financial support to eliminate the need to work multiple jobs as a full-time student so that we too can participate in and benefit from the resources that our schools have. Now, all this might sound radical, but I believe it is possible and long overdue. I believe that with collective effort from school leaders, education leaders, from privileged, financially privileged and concerned parents, philanthropists, student advocates, that we have everything it takes to create systems that actually work and serve every child. If education is going to be that great equalizer that we so claim it to be, we must re-envision the role of schools. We must dismantle our long-held notion of what schools are. This is how we're going to eliminate global poverty inequality, mental health issues, and truly empower every child. Thank you.